After this winter's record-breaking weather here in Sydney and my plant chaos as a result of it, I'm actually starting to realise something a little alarming, that next year, 2026 and beyond, is going to be so much worse. So that's why I'm going to start making this one soil amendment now that's likely going to help pretty much my entire plant collection. Apologies for any planes that you hear, like that one. That's why this microphone is out right next to me. So this winter here in Sydney has had its wettest on record since records began in 1858. And half of my outdoor plants have really suffered. They look pretty because of it. And I also know up in the US, you guys, some of you have had your hottest summer in 130 years, breaking temperature records left and right. Honestly, if this is what normal kind of looks like now, it's going to get even worse in 2026 and beyond. And I think some of the weather is going to be pretty brutal for our plants, both indoors and outdoors. That's why I'm going to start preparing now, slowly but surely, with all of my plants. So in this video, I'm actually going to show you 6 different things that I'm doing across all of my plants and my plant care collection, starting with that one soil amendment that I mentioned right at the beginning. So here's something I don't think we think about a lot, I definitely don't, when it comes to these crazy temperature weather swings. Your soil, your potting mix, is actually feeling those weather swings too, and it actually can make a difference to your plants. So when it goes from cold and wet to suddenly hot, the soil temperature can actually fluctuate by anywhere like 10 degrees in a day or more. And especially for more finicky plants or drama queen plants like calatheas or peace lilies or ferns, you know, that kind of temperature shock is rough on their root system. It's not something they're used to in their normal environment where they actually came from. So one of the things I'm going to be doing straight away, I'm actually starting it today, is adding this. So this is vermiculite. I've been wondering if I should use vermiculite in my potting mixes, my arid potting mixes before. I've never really done so because all I've really understood about it is that it helps with drainage and it helps hold water. And to be honest, I don't think I need anything to hold more water than my aroid mix already does because I've got a pretty good aroid mix. I have done a whole video about that, by the way, so if you want to have a look at it, I'll leave the link here. But I've heard a lot about vermiculite and I was always worried that my soil or my potting mix might hold too much water. But here's the thing I didn't know. Vermiculite actually helps keep the soil temperature steady. Not massively, but it does actually help. So when it's really hot, the soil stays a little bit cooler. And the opposite, when it's really cold, it holds a little bit of warmth. It's like having a temperature buffer for your soil. Don't get me wrong, it's not going to change at 10 plus degrees, but it is actually just a little bit more protection for those crazy swings like we've had here in Sydney. Like literally 2 weeks ago, it was rainy and 10 degrees, and today it's been 27 degrees, literally overnight almost. It feels really weird. So vermiculite is not only going to help me with drainage and holding a little bit of water for my plants, but also it'll help with the soil temperature and stability within that foundation. Now, you can use vermiculite in all potting mixes, really. If you're an overwaterer, perhaps don't use this. Or if you are going to add it, if you want to, up the ante on some of the aeration elements like the pumice or the orchid bark, just a little bit more so you don't overwater. Now, I'm also lucky enough to have some outdoor plants, a little bit of an outdoor area here. I might try using vermiculite here and there, but I just need to be really cautious because in our winters, as we've just had, it was record rainfall. So I don't want to put water holding elements into the soil mix when it's record rains, right? So I might just try doing it for some of my more finicky plants. Again, I've got a couple of calatheas outside, but I'm going to make sure that if I add vermiculite to that potting mix, I'm also going to up the aeration elements. So I'm going to put more pumice in it alongside about maybe 10% vermiculite. So I'm going to try that on my outdoor plants and see how we go. So if you're an overwaterer or if you've got outdoor plants and it gets very, very wet, just be cautious about me using vermiculite. Just be very wary what it does and make sure you're changing the other parts of the potting mix accordingly. Do you have plants that seem to hate every watering decision you make? Let me know in the comments below which ones are your biggest drama queens, because maybe adding some vermiculite to their potting mix might help them be a little bit less dramatic. Okay, second thing I'm doing. Now, as the heat gets really, really hot, I've got this 1-bedroom window. You've probably seen it in some of my previous videos, and it lets a lot of light in. So I put all of my really good variegated plants. If I want really good, bright, indirect light, I've got all of my almost favorite plants that will fit in that bedroom window. It's floor to ceiling. But as summer gets through and the sun changes its position in the sky, that light can get really intense. So one of the things I've been thinking about a lot, and I'm actually going to finally do it this season, is get sheer curtains. I've got blinds in there, but you close the blinds and pretty much all the light goes. So I can't really close the blinds because I still want sunlight to come in through summer. And if I'm going to have 2 weeks worth of summer days that are over 35 degrees Celsius, I'll make sure I put all the Fahrenheit numbers on the screen for you guys in case you understand. But 35 degrees is freaking hot. So if I leave my plants without any kind of extra cover or anything in my windows, they will literally get burnt. Windows do help capture a little bit of that sunburn, a little bit less, but ultimately, if I put sheer curtains in, I'll still get the light, but it'll dull down that light, but it won't burn. Sheer curtains are a great way to protect your indoor plants when you've got some up against the glass and you don't really want them to burn, but you don't really want to move them either. And then once that harsh summer heat is over and I feel confident that the weather is maybe, 27, 30 degree days, I can just pull back the sheer curtains, or I can take them off, I guess. We'll see how we go, but they'll still look a little bit nice. So I want to get good quality ones, but sheer curtains, those light sheer curtains, are actually usually not as expensive as big, thick blackout curtains, and they're better for your plants. So I'm definitely going to get them. Honestly, I've had this in my mind for such a long time, but this last summer was just a little bit OTT for my liking. And now that I've got my favorite monstera albo variegated, beautiful variegation, lots of white, I don't want it to burn. I don't want it to go brown. It's doing pretty well right now. So I'm definitely going to protect it with some sheer curtains. Honestly, have you ever had a plant that got sunburnt like overnight when the seasons changed? How frustrating is it? It's happened already just in the last 2 weeks. A couple of plants have already burnt in this hotter summer. It went, as I said, it went from 13 degrees to 27 degrees within 24, 48 hours on a couple of my plant shelves. And then once a leaf is burnt, you can't go back. You can't do anything about it. You just have to chop it off, I guess. So yeah, I don't want that to happen this summer, definitely. And speaking of sun protection, when it comes to my outdoor plants and they're getting that direct sun, if you're lucky enough to have plants outdoors, you can also get something just like the curtains to help your plants. So just like the curtains for indoors, I have actually bought some shade cloths for outdoors. Mine is a medium-sized green. It's not a dark green. You can also get dark green. You can also buy white netting. I think that might actually be bird netting or just white shade cloth. So it depends how hot it can get and what you want, I guess, aesthetically. But when we get really, really hot heat waves or just sudden sun, I end up just throwing the netting across all of them. I'm just pointing to that plant up there because that's one of them, literally. You can't see behind the camera. I just put the netting straight over all of the plants. My plants are in groups. So the really tall plants help shade and help keep that cloth stood up almost. And they shade all of the plants underneath. And then literally I will just leave that netting there for as long as I need to through the really hot, insufferable days to protect all the plants. You might think the leaves at the top of the netting get a bit burnt. I was wondering that last summer, but it never actually happened. It protected them, even though the top leaves of the really tall plants was right next to the netting. So it surprised me how much protection it really did give. So shade cloth is like an outdoor curtain for your outdoor plants if you're lucky enough to have an outdoor space and you really need it for protection. And speaking of plants together, another thing you can do, if you're not already doing it, is just strategic plant grouping. So when you group certain plants together, they help each other survive, literally, through extreme weathers, hot and cold. So think about the type of plants you've got and group them together. So all humidity-loving plants together, all ferns together, calatheas together, all cacti perhaps together. They may need a bit more sun and a bit more light. Because when you group certain plants together, they help each other thrive and grow. I mean, your house just isn't one big environment. It's not just one single temperature all the time in every single spot. It's actually a whole dozen different microclimates all throughout your house. So the corner near the window is totally different from a spot 3 feet away in terms of temperature and sunlight it gets and, humidity, etc. Same with outside. So try grouping container plants so they create their own little ecosystem. Bigger plants can provide shade for smaller ones. Dense grouping hold humidity better than scattered individual little pots, that kind of thing. But admittedly, if you're someone like me with over 300 plants, you're probably grouping your plants together automatically anyway, because there's just not enough room to have space for individual plants around the place. So for me, they end up being grouping together. I just make sure that I'm grouping like plants with like plants. Okay, next one. And that's kind of why I'm sitting here. You can see this little tree. It's not a tree. This little plant on the right. So this week, actually, for this video, I'm actually planning to do something I should have done a while back now, probably 2 years ago even. I need to move some plants around my house that just aren't working where they are. Now that I know more about plants, I can see that some of my older setups just haven't worked out. So for example, out the front near my front door, I have a Boston fern that gets shade most of the day, but it also gets hammered with direct morning sun, which I didn't realize. And then in winter, it's getting blown around by really heavy winds because it's at the top of the fence. It's sitting at the top of the fence. The one underneath it, the fern that I've got there, is a lot happier because it's a lot more protected within other plants. There's another plant just here, this one here. That one. It's called a shell ginger. I can't remember the actual official Latin name, but that one there is shaded now. But when it gets really hot and the sun is above, it gets too much sun. So I've got to put that in more shade. Same with the palm in the back corner. I've got a palm there. It gets too much sun throughout the really, really hot days. So I want to move it into a more shaded area around the front of my house, which is pretty much all shade every day, no matter what part of the year. And then finally this thing. So this thing here is a plant that came with the house when we bought it about 5 or 6 years ago. Now you can see it's not doing very well. It's got yellow leaves and everything. And the reason why I thought it was an azalea is because I took a photo and I Googled it, and I Googled the flowers that were on it at the time, and Google gave me it was an azalea. So I treated it as such, right? So I've been giving it azalea fertilizer. It's had pretty much all shade and it just has not been thriving. So I recently, over the last couple of weeks, did a bit more research on it. Turns out it's not an azalea. It's a mandevillia. It's a completely different plant. And for this plant to thrive, it needs up to 6 hours of sun a day. So it's in completely the wrong spot. So I'm going to swap this plant. I'm going to pull it out. I did a little bit of watering earlier today because it's a lot easier to change and transfer plants when they've had a bit of water. It stresses them less. So I'm going to dig her up. I'm going to put her out on the balcony slowly but surely. Every couple of weeks, I'm going to move it a little bit further out into the sun. And then the plant that's up there, I'm going to swap down here to put it into shade, and they will work perfectly. It's a perfect swap. It's a perfect transformation. So there's a few plants that I need to change to make sure that the environment is working for them and they don't get too burnt or they don't get too much shade, depending on what plant it is. And especially if it's going to get really hot or really cold, they're going to be even worse in temperature swings. And actually, this azalea problem is what made me start working on my very first digital product. You've probably heard me talk about it before on my channel, and it's called My Plant Buddy. That's what it's currently called. I'm now thinking of a new name, so bear with me. But it's my digital tool that I created to help with your unique situation on how to look after plants. The thing is, figuring out the best spot for your plant in your house can be tricky, especially if you've got a smaller house and it may not have a lot of lighting, or especially if you don't know what plant it is, or if you're just getting into plants and you're not really sure how to look after that specific plant. So I created this digital tool, My Plant Buddy, to provide a personalized plant care plan based on your home, your climate, where you live, your specific plant types, and how much experience you have with caring for plants. And actually, my digital tool actually helped me figure out my plant ID mistake. And especially for a plant like this, a floral plant that came with the house, I needed a little bit of help. So I actually think having that kind of personalized guidance where I told this digital tool where it was in my house, the type of sun it was, and wasn't getting my confusions and things, and it helped me figure out the right placement for this plant. So have a look at the link in the show notes below. There's also more information on my website if you want to see more, leafylovin.com.au/myplantbuddy. And then one final recommendation for this video is actually knowing that you can bring your plants indoors or move them outdoors as the seasons change. It's about giving certain plants the benefits of growing outdoors when conditions are good, when conditions are pretty perfect, but bringing them inside for a little bit more safety when the weather goes a bit too extreme. So my calatheas, for example, they don't like direct sun, but they love a little bit of springtime out on my covered balcony, out in the shady sections near the fence here, and they like the really beautiful spring weather. I find it just gives them a bit of a pep up as they grow. But if the weather is getting too hot, too cold, too windy, you know, my calatheas are fussy. I'll take them back inside and I'll move them back inside. Now, I don't do that very, very often. Moving plants does stress them, but if I know that I've got 5 or 6 days of nice spring weather coming up, I can put them in the shade, leave them outside, and I know that plant will just enjoy that little bit of brighter indirect light from being outside. It's kind of like giving them a holiday, but with a safety net. Now, don't get me wrong, not all plants would love this. If there are plants that are stressed out, if there are plants that are not healthy, don't move them around. Try and keep them as stable as possible in one area to make them better. If you're not quite sure, My Plant Buddy will also help you with that. Just ask it any question you want and it'll help you understand the best way to look after your specific plants. So only move them indoors or outdoors if you think it will benefit your plant. If not, just keep them be. They do like the stability. And if you are going to move them around, or if you're going to relocate plants like I am, make sure you're taking it slow. If you want to move plants outdoors especially, don't just go from a really shady spot out into direct sun because they will burn. So just do it gradually. So for example, day 1, you might want to move it closer to the window. And then day 14, you might want to move it outside into a really shady spot. And then day 28, you might want to move it into a spot that gets 2 hours of direct morning sun. That's really, really light sun. So just do it gradually as you're moving because you don't want to stress out your plant too much by giving it a huge extreme weather temperature swing. That's what this whole video is meant to avoid. So look, I'm not trying to turn my house into a greenhouse. I'd love a greenhouse, but I don't have one. And I'm not going to spend thousands of dollars on climate controls. These are small, practical changes that work in real homes with real constraints. The weather is getting more extreme, and yes, we can all feel it, but that doesn't mean our plants have to suffer alongside it. So I'm curious, which of these 6 strategies are you most excited to try? Are you going to try anything, change anything? Let me know in the comments below what your biggest weather challenge is with your plants, and do you have any extra tips and tricks to add to this video to help other people grow their plants and stay safe in real weather extremes 2026 and beyond? Let me know in the comments, add your tips, add your comments, and be part of the Leafy community. But overall, the key is thinking ahead instead of just reacting afterwards where your plants are already stressed. So start with just 1 or 2 of these changes. You don't have to do all of them, and build from there. Honestly, your plants will thank you for that little bit more extra stability that you're helping to provide with all of these different tips. So thanks very much for joining me today. And if you want more tips about getting the most out of your space, especially some really cool, fun, rental-friendly ones or smaller space ones, please do go and watch this video next. Thank you very much for joining me. Have a week full of leaves and laughter as always. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one just here. See you later. Bye. Shall we talk about problems with filming in smaller spaces next? Problems with plants I can handle. Problems with filming, the noises, the planes, the birds, the knocking, the barking. It's so hard. Okay, we've got work to do.